who was not an Israelite. The Bible says he went down. It could be possible at the start of the year. We started with members of the church together. At this moment, they are not with us, for they have gone down. When you read the book of Jonah, we are told that God told Jonah to go to Nineveh. Instead, he rejected and went down. When we do not do the will of God, our direction is down. So Judah went down from his brethren. I ask you, are you with your brothers and sisters in church? Others have decided, I'll not go into church, but I'll make my house to be the church. I'll watch television. You need what we call fellowship. For I have never seen one charcoal burn by itself. When charcoals are together, they burn, they inspire one another, and they make fire to be much. So if you decide to stay at home, you are only one charcoal and you cannot burn. After a short time, you will die. And so we are told that he left his brethren, who were the children of Israel, who were Christians, and joined a certain Adulamite who was called Hira. After a short time, he saw a woman who was called Shua and married this woman. The Bible says he went in unto her, and she conceived and bare a son called Er. This was an Israelite. He has picked a person who is not an Israelite to marry. He married very fast. We are warned by the Bible marrying very fast, because we are told that when we take time to prepare for marriage, it will be possible, it will not be possible for us to break easily, because we have taken time to prepare. Where couples have a knowledge of what is going to happen, it is not easy for them to break. So he married very fast. The way we see marriages taking very fast nowadays. I call them popcorn marriages. Pop, pop, pop. Just the way they popped, and that is how they disappear. Like bubbles. And so, conceived and got the first child, who was called Er. Conceived again and got a child called Onan. Conceived again and got the third child called Shelah. The Bible says in verse 6, and Judah took a wife for Er, his firstborn, whose name was Tamar. Just as he married very fast, he also brought a wife for his son, who was called Tamar. Brothers and sisters, there are people who enter into marriage with insufficient knowledge. And that one brings a lot of problems in future. The Bible says, Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. NIV version saying he killed him. The Bible does not say what he exactly did, but he did evil, he did wickedness in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord killed him. I want you to look at your life. How many wicked things have you done in your life? Others which you can be ashamed to speak before people, yet you are not dead today. Thank God for the grace that has been extended to us, to bring us back to our senses, so that we may be able to confess and come unto Jesus Christ. The Bible says he had gone, dead. Then, verse 8 says, and Judah said unto Onan, go in unto thy brother's wife and marry her, and raise up thy seed for the brother. You know, according to the Levitical laws, once the firstborn had died, the younger son was supposed to take the wife and raise the seed that the firstborn was supposed to raise. So when he tells him this one, he was following the Levitical laws. And so Onan went and took Tamar and married her. But the Bible says when they met together, when he knew her, he spilled it on the ground because he did not want this Tamar to conceive. The Bible says that that thing was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and he also killed him. 2 sons have gone. Now, legally, when you look at this marriage, Onan had married Tamar according to the Levitical laws, and he was performing his marital duties, but God slew him. There are people who think that when they are married, they have a license to do anything that, so long as they are in marriage. Like, for example, I met a woman who was complaining. She needed prayers. She said that the husband was sodomizing her in marriage, and say, after all, we are married, we can do anything. One writer talks about excessiveness in marriage. And she says that there are things which you can do in marriage that can be excess, and that is sin. For that which is good, when it is carried to excess, it becomes sin. So when you sodomize your wife, when you do some of the things which are not required, that is sin unto the Lord, even though the two of you are married legally. That is why God slew. How many wicked things have we done in the license of marriage, and yet we are alive? Now, if you are the father of these sons, by now you could be worried. Why? My 2 sons have died with this lady. In the burial site, I want us to think together. In the burial site, people come, they want to bury Onan, and they are so much moved. Others will give promises which are empty during the burial days because they have been moved. I can imagine one person stood and say, Brother Judah, you have been bereaved of your 2 sons. I promise that I am going to educate this child who has remained. We are going to give a job for this wife of your sons who has been left behind. They give empty promises. As they give those promises, Judah also rises up and saying, my daughter-in-law Tamar, remain in my house. When my son Shelah will grow up, I will give him to you as a husband. He also gives an empty promise. The Bible says when Shelah grew up, Judah never gave him to Tamar. And so Tamar came up with a plan. He promised to give me this as a husband. He has not given me. I have to do something in order to become pregnant and preserve a seed, because they were despised if they did not have children, more especially men. So she devised a plan. And let's read it as we go down. The Bible says in verse 12, that is Genesis chapter 38, and in the process of time, the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died, and Judah was comforted. Even after a short time, the wife of Judah, who was called Shua, died, bereaved of the 2 sons, bereaved of the wife. Now he has remained to be a widower. The Bible says, after a short time, he was comforted and went up unto his sheep shearers to Timnath, and his friend Hira the Adulamite. He had very many sheep. Now he was going to work, and you want to see the way he is going to be tempted because of discipline. And so the Bible says in verse, as we go down, in verse 13, and it was told Tamar, saying, behold, thy father-in-law goeth to Timnath to shear the sheep. When Tamar was told that your father-in-law is going to Timnath, she came up with a plan. Be careful, men and women who are married. Be careful, even though you are single, because there is someone planning in your life to bring you down. Verse 13. And Tamar was told, saying, Behold, thy father-in-law goeth up to Timnah to shear his sheep. Verse 14. And she put her widow's garment off from her, and covered her with a veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in an open place, which is by the way to Timnath. For she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given unto him to a wife. That is the plan. I want us to go carefully through that plan and see what happens. Verse 14 again. This is what she did. She put her widow's garment off from her. The widow's garment is not attractive. Who can get attracted to a person with widow's garment? Perhaps it's black or whatever the way it is. I cannot be able to describe. But all I know, it is not attractive. She put it off from her and covered her face. That is the second thing she did. She covered her face to conceal her identity and wrapped herself. The third thing she did. How can a woman wrap herself? Look at the gift packs that we wrap. You can see every corner of that gift because it has been wrapped. You can almost guess what it is because it has been wrapped. When a woman wraps herself, how can she wrap herself? You go to the market. When they go to buy their dresses, they touch them. Does it stretch? Does it stretch? Does it stretch? The stretchers. So that when they buy those clothes that stretch, they put them, they portray every corner of their body. Someone has given a graphic example about it, saying that you can touch that dress and think it is the second skin. Wrapped. She removed her widow's garment, she veiled her face, and she wrapped herself. And the Bible says, let's see what she did next. After wrapping herself, she sat in an open place. She got out of the house where she was mourning, and she went to an open place where everybody sees her. The Bible says, verse 15, and Judah saw her, and he thought her to be an harlot because she had covered her face. That one scares me very much. You have spent an hour on the mirror. You have beautified yourself in a mirror for a full hour, 2 hours. You cannot take and read the Bible for an hour, or you cannot even pray for an hour. Jesus Christ asked the disciples, you could not even pray for an hour, but you can spend an hour in a mirror. Get serious. If a friend visits you tonight, you can talk with a friend until midnight, 2 a.m., but you cannot talk to Jesus in prayer. Even 10 minutes. Only to come out of the the room when someone looks at you, thinks that you are a prostitute. Let me ask you this question. Is it possible you have taken an hour or you have taken time to beautify yourself, and when you get out and when people look at you, they think that you are a prostitute? It is possible. Biblical scholars have identified clothes with profession. When you see a nurse, you can never confuse a nurse for a policeman. And when you see a policeman, you can never confuse him or her for somebody else, because those clothings, they portray what we are. Let's open Proverbs chapter 7, verse 10. Proverbs chapter 7, verse 10. There is something there I want us to get as we go on with a fall on the way to work. Proverbs chapter 7, verse 10, it says, "And behold, there met him a woman with an attire of an harlot." NIV says, "Then out came a woman to meet him, dressed like a prostitute and with crafty intent." Do you know that you can dress like a prostitute even though you are not a prostitute? Tamar was not a prostitute. It's because she removed her widow's garment and put a veil on her face. Not only that, she wrapped herself, she put on clothes that portrayed her body. And when her father-in-law passed by, looked and thought she was a prostitute. How many people have looked at you and thought you are a prostitute? Do you know that you are sending wrong signals outside? One person has written and said that such ladies who dress like that, they will never attract a godly man. Instead, they will attract a dog. Such men who dress like that, you have found men even piercing their ears and their nose and even plaited their hair. Let me ask you, men, if Jesus was here presently, physically, do you think Jesus Christ would plait his hair? Do you think Jesus Christ will pierce his ears? And when people look at us, when godly ladies will look at us, they'll never get attracted to us. Instead, we'll attract the opposite of a dog, which is a bitch. Brothers and sisters, Judah, when he saw the daughter-in-law, he could not be able to see it was the daughter-in-law because she had concealed herself. There is the book called Gospel Workers, page 317. It says, Christ was never deceived by appearance. When we have the Spirit of God, we can never be deceived by appearance. And that is why many of us have been deceived by appearance. God told Samuel, do not look at his appearance. I have rejected him. I do not look as a man. You look at outward appearance, but I look at the heart. I have rejected him. That is why when you talk to members, what kind of lady will you like to have? Figure 8, figure 11, whatever. You describe about the physical appearance, what kind of man you like in your life. A man who has bays, who has a mustache, who is tall. Those ones do not matter in the presence of God. Looks are important, but they do not take the first position in our lives. And because of that, we have been deceived. You marry looks when you come into marriage. A lady gives birth to a child, she loses her shape. And you still follow other figures outside because you married a figure. Brothers and sisters, we have to be very, very careful on this. When Judah looked at the daughter-in-law, he could not be able to tell that this was a daughter-in-law, but he thought her to be a prostitute. My brothers and sisters, let me tell you something that may scare you. Perhaps in the plan of God, he had said, Sister A will get married to Brother B. But do you know, because of our dress, Sister A may end up marrying Brother F. And you'll have a miserable marriage. Because you send out wrong signals. The Proverbs chapter 7 verse 10 that we read, a woman came out with the attire of a harlot. dressed like a prostitute. If the Spirit of God is in you, no one needs to tell you that that dress is too short. Your mirror will tell you that it's too short. You know, you meet people in the street and you wonder. They have worn blouses that start late, almost exposing the breast outside. And they have worn blouses that end earlier and they expose the stomach. You find them wearing skirts, wearing even trousers that start late, and they expose what is inside until they have lost dignity. I want us to read Exodus chapter 28, verse 2. There is something there. Exodus chapter 8, verse 2. The Bible says in King James Version, "And thou shalt make holy garments for Aaron, thy brother, for glory and for beauty." Dresses are meant for glory and beauty. Let's go to NIV Version. It says, "Make sacred garments for your brother Aaron to give him dignity and honor." Dresses will give us dignity and honor. You are a married lady. You dress like an unmarried lady. I'm not saying that unmarried ladies should dress like that. But you lower yourself to an extent. Even a person who is in standard 8 approaches you because you have lost self-respect. Clothes that will give us honor and dignity. Let's go on. The Bible says in verse 16, Genesis chapter 38, verse 16, "And he turned unto her by the way and said, Go to, I pray thee, let me come into thee. For he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law." Dresses, the way we dress can conceal what we are. The Bible has put it into brackets. He never knew that he was talking to the daughter-in-law. That's interesting. How far we can go with dresses. The verse concludes by saying, "And she said, What wilt thou give me that thou mayest come in unto me?" This is what we are seeing happening. Men and women in the streets, and men go there to bargain. Women go there to bargain. What will you give me? That is the language that is domineering our current generation. What will you give me? Brothers and sisters, this woman turned the encounter with the father-in-law into business. What will you give me? I ask you, brothers and sisters, don't answer me. Have you ever said to a person, "What will you give me?" You know, one writer says, Jesus Christ looks at us and his angels record what we are doing while they are shedding tears. You know, the body that Jesus Christ purchased with his own blood, you have taken it for prostitution. What will you give me? And that statement, "What will you give me?" has brought displeasure unto Jesus Christ. It has broken families. It has disintegrated families. It has brought separation, divorce. It has brought AIDS. What will you give me? So that you may come in unto me. Let's hear what this man, Judah, said. The Bible says in verse 17, "And he said, I will send thee a kid from the flock." And she said, "What wilt thou give me a pledge till thou send it?"